All right. Hello, everyone. We still have some attendees filtering in, but we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank everyone for joining us for this edition of Webinar Wednesday, which is sponsored by the Foundation for Facial Aesthetic Surgery and Candace Crow Design. My name is TK Crow, and I will be moderating this webinar. This series is intended to give you actionable tips to help your practice and a taste of what you can expect at the FFAS Annual Symposium being held March 28th through 31st, 2019 in New Orleans, Louisiana. As a thank you for attending today's webinar, we will be providing a registration discount code worth $75 off your registration for the symposium. So if you like what you hear today, please register. Today, you are in for a special treat. Our presenter is Karen Zupko. Over multiple decades, Karen and her team at Karen Zupko and Associates have helped an ever-growing number of physicians and healthcare managers improve practice profitability, operational efficiency, and the patient experience. Her firm was named one of the top 10 medical practice management solution providers of 2018 by Healthcare Tech Outlook. She is a regularly invited speaker at major national and international events, as well as a regular contributor to the top industry trade journals. Today, Karen will be presenting on strategic scheduling and your bottom line. Just a note, there will be time for a Q&A at the end of Karen's presentation, so feel free to submit your questions via the questions tab, and we'll answer them at the end. Ladies and gentlemen, Karen Zupko, strategic scheduling and your bottom line. Okay, Karen, you're good to go.
Great. Hello, everyone. It's important that we started this program on time when we're discussing scheduling. So thanks very much, TK, for that warm welcome. This is the Karen Zupko and Associates team, many familiar faces if you've attended other of our programs. Well, I want to dig right in because I've got a lot of material.
Let me just stop you real quick. Your slides are not up on the screen, so go ahead and change that.
Okay.
There should be a drop-down menu. Sorry about that.
Show screen.
Oh, there you go. Sorry.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, let's dig right in then. The fact is that the person who controls the schedule controls physician income. And how do they do that? Well, they decide they really want to be out on 5 and at 5, and so they book the last consult at 3:30. They might not follow up on consults. There are a myriad of things that staff can do that really have a bottom line impact. Okay, now we're having trouble advancing these slides. Let's see if that works. Okay. All right, I hope that we have the last of our technical difficulties worked out there. A really important thing to do if you have not gone through this exercise is to figure out what the surgeon's time is worth in the operating room and what it's worth in the OR. And of course, that's a relatively simple calculation. You add up your OR hours booked for some period of time, and you divide the revenue and see what you come up with. So typically, last couple of workshops I've done with surgeons in attendance, I've asked what do they think their time is worth. Somewhere between $1,500 and $1,800 is the most common answer. And then, of course, there are those who say my time in the operating room is worth $2,500 or more. If you charge for consult, some surgeons answer me and say, well, my time in the office isn't worth anything. Well, I disagree with that. If you charge for consults, your time in the office certainly does produce value. If you, the surgeon, are the injector, your office hours can have value almost equal or exceeding your time in the operating room. I want to remind you about one client we had who was surprised to learn that his discount-driven patient care coordinator resulted in his multiple procedure big cases being $800 an hour, which meant that he was really quite cash strapped. So this topic is absolutely worth your time and attention. There are a number of clinical issues that impact scheduling, and gosh, to go through every single one of these, we'd have to be on a 2-hour webinar. But I want you to take a look at this slide and look at things like who does the picture, who does the pictures, who does the imaging. And I know from firsthand experience that when you incorporate a wonderful tool like Vectra in your practice, it is going to lengthen that consult time, and you can't do everything the way you always did. You're really going to have to work through a new dance, if you will, a new way of scheduling. Subspecialty differentials are also very significant, and we go to practices, and unfortunately, there is no customization of the scheduling template. If you have 3 surgeons in your office, I'm going to guarantee you that all 3 don't have the same preference for how they'd like to start the day, for the amount of time that they want you to schedule that facial rejuvenation patient. So we really stress the importance of customizing and getting your other providers, your esthetician, your nurse injector, to really articulate what a good day would look like. And there could be 2 models of a good day, but it's important that they define that for you. Time, I want to point out, is a wasting asset. And in this way, your surgery practice is like an airline. That plane takes off and those seats are empty. We never get a second chance to collect. And the same thing is true with you. There's 2 consult hours that aren't productively scheduled. You don't get a second chance. So we're going to talk about qualifying patients for those consult opportunities, and we'll talk about preventing no-shows. Sometimes when I go to a practice, the architect of this crime scene, the criminal, is in fact the surgeon. And I'll bet many of you will agree with me that these famous last words represent delusional thinking, and that there's absolutely nothing that any surgeon does that only takes a minute. So 10 minutes here, 12 minutes there, that adds up, and we wind up behind the 8 ball for the whole day. And that brings me to my next point. You have to have truth in scheduling, not be scheduling cases based on wishful thinking. The doctor went to a course, his colleague can do that breast dog in 60 minutes. It takes him or her 90. If we really know that facelift is going to take 4.5 hours and we only scheduled 4, it creates this kind of chaos. So being honest in terms of the amount of time you need to schedule is critically important. I will always remember the conversation with this surgeon. We were down in New Orleans. He has an in-office operating room, but he also does some very big cases at a hospital. And when he has his hospital morning, the staff never made an adjustment because the template said that office hours started at 1 o'clock. He said, for me to finish the case, go to the locker room, shower, dress, walk to the parking lot, drive to the office, park. He said, I'd have to be Superman to be there at 1 o'clock. So if you have some of these little seemingly unimportant edits, I'd encourage you to rethink those and make that fix. Logically, he was going to start there at 1:30. And that's only if everything went right. The advice that I give our clients is that more is not better. and that pre-qualifying patients, and that can be done in a variety of ways. I have one surgeon who has his own, they have their own office operating room, and they are very, very strict about BMI. Like 32 is their sort of cutoff. And I'm not suggesting that yours be 32, but I am suggesting that you think about that. I have another client who, if you don't have a date in mind when you're thinking about this, in their book, you are in the early, this is not my recommendation, but you are in the early stages of shopping, and you might not get a consult appointment for quite some period of time. We do think it's a very good idea to ask prospective patients how it is that they happen to have found your office. We know that people who are recommended by a past patient of yours are more likely to schedule than someone who just randomly found you on the internet, okay? Seeing the fewest number of consults with the greatest result is the goal. We also discourage overbooking. And sometimes this happens when people have decided to do free consults, and they have high, no show. They decide, well, the solution to that is to overbook. And I am going to suggest you're not working in your own interest. It's a mistake for sure. These people do not schedule at the same rate when they are quite angry about sitting there for an hour or more waiting. And a review of Yelpers shows that tardiness, waiting time, is one of the top 3 reasons people go to the internet and really complain about a practice. Before, and I want to make this point, as the slide suggests, before, if you kept people waiting, in the 70s and the early 80s, they would tell 7 friends. That was about the ratio. Now they post, and it can potentially be seen by dozens, hundreds, or thousands of patients. We know that negative word of mouth then counteracts all the good work that TK and Candace have done to build up your website, to take care of your SEO, to get people calling your practice. So if avoiding online criticism is one of your goals, you will work very hard to be on time. A physician's spouse who worked in the practice and gave her husband some very sage advice, said, you know something, if we are more than 15 minutes late for somebody's consultative appointment, we're going to comp that. It's going to be complimentary. And that was one way they had of minimizing some of the disgruntled patients on the rare occasion when they were late. They really placed a high value on timeliness. And if we need any humor in this subject, we'll turn to Gary Trudeau's column in which he provided an invoice that patients could provide their surgeons with. Well, I am a great believer that analysis pays off. And I think if you review one quarter and you look at what type of patient, and we're going to do that in a couple of ways, what type of patient was most typically late? Is it the younger patients who are or who no show? Is it the younger patient who's typically coming in for aesthetic non-surgical services? Is it middle-aged women coming in for surgery? Is it some of your male patients coming in for hair treatment? I'll tell you one thing that I have noticed over the years, regardless if I'm in Manhattan, Kansas or Manhattan, New York, huge mistake to see consults in the afternoon. And if you are not impeccably on time for that 1 or 2 o'clock appointment, it is going to be problematic if that woman has to go and pick up kids at school at 3 p.m. I've been in countless practices where those people are anxiously flipping, looking at their watch, and they simply get up and leave. So it might be the case to have some one morning where you do consults, and or that you absolutely inquire about what time they're going to need to be leaving your office if they've got another afternoon obligation. Worst thing that happens is that patients have they're anxious, they have the consult, and they walk out and leave without receiving a quote. Why is that so bad? Because we know from experience that patients who leave the office and receive a mailed quote never schedule at the same rate as those who actually had a sit-down meeting with your patient care coordinator, could ask questions, could ask for another quote, maybe with one procedure less, and your coordinator could talk about the real value represented by the amount that you're asking for. So some analysis about no-shows and analysis about what days patients are most likely to be late. In our experience, Mondays and Fridays, if you in fact have office hours, are two of the days of the week with the greatest degree of variability. And that's not to say that that has to be the same for your office. In yours, it could be Thursday afternoon. Another piece of analysis that we have found to be productive and profitable is to analyze those no-shows in two different ways. One I've already mentioned, which is by referral source. In other words, random internet searches, not the same as referred by a friend who was a past patient. And if there are some ASPS plastic surgeons listening, we know that breast dogs from the internet are not the same as those patients who were referred by, again, a past patient of yours. So I think we want to look at no-show appointments by procedure as well. You cannot manage what you don't measure. And I really want to give full credit. This was a nurse manager in an Ohio-based plastic surgery practice, and she prepared this sort of summary for the doctor and for the other staff members each month, and how many patient hours they had. And notice down at the bottom, this is really, really, really important, which is to list how many days the surgeon was out of the office. So I've got one guy that's a big bird hunter, and he is absent quite a bit in September and October as he runs around hunting, but then wants to know why his November and December surgeries are so low. Why is he so slow there? Well, because those consults needed to be seen during the time when he was sitting in the duck blind. One big item of discussion, I just had this happen earlier this week at a plastic surgery practice, and that was who is doing the pre-ops. And it's so interesting when you bring new blood, new energy, new perspectives into a practice. The nurse practitioner said, you know, I worked for a very successful practice in Florida, and I, nurse practitioner, and my colleague did all the pre-ops. The doctors did not see those patients unless they wanted to add a procedure, they wanted to add some other particular concern. Otherwise, the pre-ops were done by the nurse practitioners, which again freed up the doctors to see more new patients or to leave a little bit earlier. And there's a big distinction in my mind between post-ops. Post-operative appointments occur within that 90-day global. Whether you are an aesthetic, it's an aesthetic procedure, or it is a reconstructive procedure, 90-day global, normal healing should be done in that time frame. Scars tend to be the most unattractive in that healing phase between the 2 and 3 month period. And again, I think if we've got a secure portal, a picture with a phone could be very helpful to you engaging those. FFAS are return visits, and this particular surgeon had a bit of a problem with those, that we're bringing people back at 6 months. We're bringing people back at 9 months. For what reason? And all sorts of blah, 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 blah was said to me. And then I started looking at the charts of the FFAS who were coming in the rest of the week. And the last entry in the chart was patient doing fine. So the surgeon had an idea that if you keep bringing people back, they will then decide that they need something else done. And that, again, doing data analysis was not proving to be the case. So we want to look at the number of cosmetic consults. We want to look at the number of reconstructive consults if you are still in that line of work. How many patients you're seeing for toxins, how many for fillers, and how many were combo patients. We also looked at the OR time that was available and the time that was filled. So I encourage you to take a page off of this slide, create your own chart, and begin to do a little bit of analysis. One cautionary note is don't delete the no-shows. You want to track those. And in particular, post-op patients who don't return and don't return as directed and then have some sort of complication, I encourage you to have a policy that says that revision surgery will be done at the doctor's discretion if all post-operative advice and appointments are kept and followed. So I think that's a really smart thing for you to do. So we'd like to track those no-show appointments, all right? And we want to track and chart. I think every single office should have a scheduling Zarina. In most practices, we have people at the front desk scheduling. We have the patient care coordinator scheduling. We have who knows who else may be scheduling. And when nobody is truly accountable, nobody owns the schedule, it winds up having snafus, which are, situation normal, all effed up. So I'm going to encourage you to have somebody who looks at that schedule a week ahead and spots the predictable bottlenecks, sees where we're likely to be running late. So scheduling Zarina, I don't know if it's your PCC, if it's your office manager, but somebody needs to be in charge and looking at the schedule. Well, let's talk about no-show prevention. And I remember this conversation with the surgeon who said, well, obviously, Karen, we're bringing you in because it's not what we're doing. So overbooking is not the answer to protect yourself against no-shows. Well, what should a good no-show plan look like? I think one of the key things is scheduling aesthetic consultations within 3 to 5 days of the patient's call. And again, more consultations are not better. I think we need to screen those requests based on some health issues. We need to screen based on referral source. If it's somebody who is referred by, again, a good patient of yours, I may move some things around to get that scheduled. We may come in early, we may stay late. Long gaps between the first call and the appointment guarantee you that patient is going to let their fingers do the dialing, and they're going to have a consult with one of your colleagues or competitors. I think you want to schedule the post-op appointments when the case is scheduled. And I'm always surprised that people don't think to do this. And when they don't, you find people running around the office with their hair on fire going, well, I don't know where we're going to put these people. You knew that they were going to have to come back 1 day after surgery, 5 days after surgery. 2 weeks later to see the doctor, whatever your physician's protocol is. And again, if you have multiple surgeons, I don't assume that their protocols are the same. But we would always be scheduling the post-op appointments when the surgery is scheduled. We do think that it's really smart to have open slots for work-ins and complications. I was just at a practice yesterday, and we have a big problem with staff being able to override the template. I think you design a template, it's locked down, and if somebody has a good reason to make an exception, to double book, they're going to go to the scheduling's arena and ask for permission. But it should not be allowed that anybody can put anybody that they happen to talk to into the schedule randomly. That you're asking for trouble by doing that. And indeed, this the reason that this was brought up was she scheduled 4 new patients for 2 o'clock. And I mean, it was a complete zoo over there. And confirmation of appointments is key. And we're going to talk about the technologies and systems that are available for you to do that. One other big way that we have been preventing no-show appointments in aesthetic practices is by taking a credit card guarantee. And you say, well, how much would you take? First of all, let me run through what that conversation is going to be like. I would say, Candace, we've got you scheduled to see Dr. Smart next Friday at 1 o'clock. And what credit card would you like to use to guarantee your appointment? Candace says, well, why are you asking for a credit card? No other doctor asks for that. Well, I would say, Candace, we've really had a problem with no-show patients. We have found that when people give us their credit card, if their plans change, they remember to call and let us know. I have scheduled 1 hour or 45 minutes of time with you for Dr. Smart. And I want to, again, emphasize that you would not be able to schedule a massage just about anywhere coast to coast without providing a credit card to guarantee that time. Again, think of the empty airline seat. Once that hour's gone, it's gone, and there's no opportunity to recover it. And I also want to make the point that it is highly unlikely and unbelievable that everybody you see schedules that same day. You have to see a requisite number of patients, and it may be 3 to 1, it may be 4 to 1, it depends on your fee schedule and all kinds of other things, what kind of marketing you're doing, that depends on who you attract. So I strongly recommend taking a credit card guarantee, and we discuss this at length, provide emails, sample emails, and exactly how to do this at our regional workshops. We've got 2 coming up in February, one in Orlando and one in Las Vegas. So if you need help there, come see us. If you have a big injectable, non-surgical practice, we also encourage you to take deposits. We've worked for some of the leading aesthetic dermatologists, and believe me, they all do. If they're going to be doing periorbital injections, those are not 10, 15, 20-minute appointments. If you're doing that between the numbing, between getting the injection done, you're probably looking at closer to 45 minutes to an hour. So we do take a deposit there. We charge 1 syringe. No-show prevention plan. Again, we've worked with practices that institute this. They pre-register all new patients. All new patients are pre-registered. You're called 5 days before your appointment if they haven't received your demographic and health history data. If, again, some of you are still doing some reconstructive work, we want to verify eligibility. I don't want the patient to arrive for that first and most expensive appointment only to discover that that insurance card isn't good. Your pre-consult packets, your demographic and registration materials can be sent via email, or you can have those online as forms which can be completed online. So that's one way. They can be password protected on your website. Some of you have a patient portal, and you can have those then sent to you or faxed back if that is more comfortable for your patient. It is 2019 and text is king. Solution Reach is one company that can provide this option for you. Some of the other Nextech, some of the other commonly used systems for in aesthetic practices offer another solution. So we encourage you to give that a try. It's certainly more convenient for the patient to answer you than it is to pick up a phone call if they're at work or sitting in a meeting. You know, we can learn an awful lot from other specialists, and certainly aesthetic dentists have this down. They start the confirmation process 5 to 7 days prior to a visit. This is particularly important if you are a practice that schedules patients much longer than 3 to 5 days out. You're scheduling 2 weeks out. Then 5 to 7 days, 5 to 7 working days ahead, you're going to want to reconfirm that that patient plans to keep that appointment. Try a negative option, and that works this way, that says, geez, Mary, if I don't hear from you by 5 o'clock, I will release the consultation time that you have booked, which is tomorrow, Thursday at 2 o'clock. So the negative option sometimes serves as a very good reason for the patient to respond to your confirmation call. And I always believe that people should have an active work-in list. For example, our office is just around the corner from the doctors that many of us see at Northwestern, and we always say, geez, all right, well, if you're going to make me wait 6 weeks to see that gastroenterologist, please call me if somebody doesn't show up, because I am literally an elevator and a block away. Elevator ride and a block away, okay? All right, let me close with a couple of golden pieces of advice. Do not start the day with new patients. We encourage you to start the day, if the doctor has 3 exam rooms available, start with 3 rechecks or post-ops. Out of the 3, 1 will be late, 1 won't come, maybe, and you will have 2 people there to get the day started. Then in that next wave, you can schedule your new patient, okay? And again, a reminder, please be creative. Sit with your physician or NPs, PAs, and schedule their day the way they would like to have it. I'm re-emphasizing that point. I see that the template is just how it came out of the box. Again, a reminder to recognize subspecialty differences. And I want to turn over to our question segment, but with this guy, and actually it was a much older man. I was visiting a cardiology practice, one of those giant 25 doctor practices with long hallways, and it was pretty embarrassing when the cleaning crew opened the exam room door and there was a man who was sitting and waiting, and the staff had gone home and left him there. They forgot him. And so now the rule is nobody goes home until every exam room door is opened and checked. So we certainly hope that doesn't happen to you. I want to thank you for your time and your attention and your interest, and I welcome your questions.
Wow, Karen, that was really, really good. Thank you so much. We're now going to take some questions. If you have any questions, please submit them in the questions tab. I was following along with you, and I really liked what you said about the fewest number of consults with the greatest results. And I was wondering if you could just expand on what the greatest results are, and if that is, results revenue wise, or from a personal satisfaction angle, or how to identify what the greatest results are for a specific physician or surgeon.
Sure. TK, one of the things, and I think this will resonate with you because I know that everybody over at your operation agrees with me, that the constant email barrage of discounts and deals, you are planting a seed that your practice is typically on sale. So very often it's the marketing that is bringing in that deal-seeking patient who wants to play, the price is right, let's make a deal with you. I don't understand why you want to attract more people like that. I find my clients who charge a consultation fee, who take a credit card guarantee, and who don't feel like they have to change their operating policies to bring these transactional patients in, because then when you present the quote, the person is like, what? I had no idea it was going to be this much. Can't you do better? I really need a discount. You see what I mean? So if those are the people that you're attracting, you're going to have to see more of them because they are only there for the price. And I always quote Harry Beckwith, who I consider to be a brilliant business advisor. I highly recommend his book, Selling the Invisible. And one of Beckwith's rules is, if people come for the price, they will leave for the price, whether it's surgery or whether it's your injectables. That's just crazy making. So instead of feeling like, in order to fill my surgery block, I've got to see 3 20-minute consults, and the doctor then is feeling a certain amount of pressure, right, to get through these, it would be much better if we attracted patients who were more interested in your reputation, who knew your reputation, who understood the value of your work, and you could have a meaningful, leisurely 45-minute consult in which the patient actually has time to bond with you. Does that help?
Yeah, no, that's great. One of the overwhelming feelings that I got from your presentation was that, more is not necessarily better. And sometimes it's important to just slow down and really take a hard look at, what you want out of your, business, your career, your time, and then focus on that. So I think that was a really informative of how to, identify and set yourself up as a practice that really goes after the types of patients that they can serve the best.
I want to give you an example exactly that reinforces what you're saying. On Monday, I was with 2 women surgeons in their 50s, and they looked at, we were looking at the staff compensation a bonus system that had been set up by a previous advisor, and it was inquiries to consults, and that was expected to be 80%. But these 2 are saying, I don't want to work as hard as I have been working. So that was an example of rewarding staff for more is better. And the doctor saying, I would rather see fewer patients in a more relaxed fashion who were coming again because they're referred.
Yeah, so I totally agree. Yeah.
We're changing that reward, we're changing that bonus metric. And that's the bottom line there. Sorry, I needed to get that conclusion in.
No, I totally agree. I think that's a great insight, and it's almost I think across the board, just as Americans, we have this kind of work grind it out kind of attitude, and that in itself can just be incredibly exhausting. And I've seen it myself in just my own short life. So I know that I can't imagine what some of these practices are facing. And I think some of it kind of comes from maybe, I don't know how to say this right, but maybe a little bit of insecurity about trying to keep up with everyone else. So do you have any kind of, maybe some tips to kind of just help practices like recenter and focus on themselves and, identify the areas where they can grow and increase their effectiveness or efficiencies?
Sure. I think trying harder and feeling like you're the come from behind kid, right? And that's what it's like when you're starting your practice. You're trying so hard and you have a feeling that everybody else is ahead of you. And then all of a sudden you sort of wind up in this, and all your hard work paid off. And now you're in this mid-career point. You've got to change your thinking. Your practice has grown up. Your practice has grown up. And you should be reaping the rewards of all of your thoughtful hard work. I also think, and this was pretty interesting, you have to decide what you don't want to do anymore. What procedures leave you joyless? And one of the women surgeons, obviously not coming from the facial plastic discipline, said, I wake up in the morning and I look and I see that I've got that facelift on the schedule and I get this pit in my stomach. I said, well, then let's not accept facelift consults anymore. So editing your practice, it's almost sometimes, TK, I feel like the blue fairy, Glenda the Good Witch, saying you don't have to do facelifts anymore. You always had that choice. So deciding what it is that leaves you joyless is an important exercise in that when you're in that mid, peak of your career. It's okay to say, I'm not going to do this or that anymore.
I totally agree. I think that is incredible wisdom and advice to all of our attendees. And just as a last question, I think how often would you, going back to the what the time costs while they're in surgery versus while they're in consultations, and how often would you recommend someone kind of check in and track that number and for people to take that personal look at their practices and themselves and measure those things and see where they're at on the what procedures I like versus don't like doing? How often do you think people should do that exercise?
TK, in order to have a representative case mix, it's obviously easier to do it at the end of every quarter, but I wouldn't come to a conclusion until I had 2 quarters of data. And why is that? Because your quarters, and let me be specific there, third quarter tends to be, in most practices, the equivalent of the doldrums. That part of sailing in the ocean where when you hit around the equator, the wind stops. And I've been doing this for 30 years, and I've got people who call me and, they do their weather exchange sometime in August and September, and they say, hey, if you are, is it slow for everybody? And it's predictably slow for everybody during that period of time. And conversely, for decades, surgeons have been saying, Karen, I could operate till 8 o'clock at night on Christmas Eve if I wanted to. That is the, Katie bar the door. It's the busy season. So I wouldn't want you to just do Q4 and decide that was the pattern, because it will be incorrect. So I encourage you to do it quarterly, and I would do my analysis then sometime in July this year and see what that looks like. Does that make sense?
Totally. I think it's important. Sometimes people need like permission to kind of take that downtime and really do the self-reflection that really yields them the greatest results in the long run. So I really loved your message today, and just slowing down, more isn't always better, and really concentrate on amazing service, and then getting the no-shows down. So I just want to thank you again for taking the time to give this presentation today. We will be sending out the slides or the video copy of the presentation, as well as the discount code for the FFAS symposium, which is at the end of March in New Orleans. So look out for that.
And I'm
Karen,
looking forward to being there, TK.
great. Yeah, we're excited to have you. Karen will be presenting at the symposium. So if you enjoyed today's presentation, please go ahead and register online. We'll be sending out that discount code in just a little bit. So once more, thank you so much, Karen. And this is the FFAS Webinar Wednesday signing off. Thanks again.